Hey, Steve, and thanks for joining us today. As we're getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me. A big fan. I've been in sales for about 26 years, primarily started off in the software space, and now I've kind of moved on to the IT, managed IT services. I've been doing that for the last 10 plus years. Based in New Orleans. My company is Res Tech, so we provide IT services. My current employer, we provide IT services to local businesses. So in college, I did Bachelor of Arts. I did a lot of theater, acting, that kind of thing. And when I got out, I just kind of decided, yeah, sales is probably the best thing for me for my career.
Yeah. What was the motivation for sales? Was it just personality match or?
I think so. I just like interacting with people. It's one of those things. I'm not the type of person that's going to sit in an office chair all day long. I like to be out and about, interacting with people. And then, once I started early in my career, when I started to have a sales responsibility, I really enjoyed, the challenge.
Yeah.
It's fun. You got to have fun with it.
And when you say have fun, what does that mean to you?
Well, if it's like a win or loss kind of scenario, it's like a sport in some ways.
Yeah.
So of course, no one likes losing. You're not going to win everything, uh, but at the same time, when you do win, it's kind of a high, and it's
Yeah.
always a kind of is there such a level of satisfaction, especially during a sales cycle when you start, from the initial call to the meeting to bring sending the proposal and then winning. There is no greater feeling, and that has never gotten old for me.
Yeah. And where'd you get that competitive spirit? Was it from sports or theater or?
Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I mean, I played basketball and swimming were probably my two major sports. But yeah, definitely competitive. I love sports. A lot of what I talk about as it relates to sales, I kind of like to use sports analogies. So,
Yeah.
for example, I like to tell my coworkers and my boss, my mentor Clayton Mooney, that we're kind of like NFL cornerbacks. The cornerbacks have the hardest position in the NFL. They have to match the best receiver, and even the best uh, cornerbacks get burned from time to time, but they have a short memory. And I think that kind of correlates with sales. You're not going to win every deal, right? But the bottom line is you got to move on, short memory, and stay focused.
Yeah. And what do you feel is your strongest selling characteristic?
Uh, it's something I think you talked about. It's empathy. When
Yeah.
you meet a prospect, you really got to connect with them. Time is short. People have a lot shorter uh, attention spans nowadays just because of technology. So able to empathize with the client and listen, more importantly, stop talking, listen. So my ability to listen, engage, and bring my value uh, quickly and make appreciate the prospect's time. Be sensitive to that, and let them know that that's your approach.
Yeah. And your space is pretty competitive, isn't it?
Absolutely, I probably have just here locally in the New Orleans South. I mean, we're Res Tech, the company I work for. We pretty much covered the whole Southeast, but
Yeah.
yeah, just in my local market, New Orleans, I probably have 25 competitors
Well, and
that do exactly what we do.
so how do you deal with that? How do you
I think
differentiate?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think where we're successful, and again, I keep harping on my boss, Clayton Mooney, but one thing that we do from our sales perspective is, we have a process. We don't wing anything. So, in other words, we have a process from the first outreach to when you actually get the meeting. There is a process during that meeting. It's very well oiled machine. And then once, yeah, obviously, we try to go for the one call close if we can do it.
Yeah.
But if we don't get the one call close, um, it's about the follow up as well, but also having a cadence with the follow up. In other words, not annoying the prospect, but we keep it simple, in terms of enabling the prospect to see what kind of decision they should be making, if it's with us or with somebody else. But I would argue we have the best process in our market.
Because a lot of people don't like the process. They like to go with the flow, be intuitive,
Right.
but let's face it, you have to accomplish certain things. And if you don't have a
Right.
process, you don't know what game you're playing, do you?
Exactly.
Yeah. And how did you come up with this process, or was it the companies already, or?
Uh, Actually, it's a process that, again, I keep mentioning Clay, that I've worked with him for 10 years. It's kind of evolved. But yeah, I mean, I think what we do is 100% different than what our competitors do in terms of how we start, from the get go, meeting the prospect to the point of, proposing. I think we do have a very unique model.
Yeah. Can you give us a sense that you do better discovery, elicit pain? Um,
Yeah, discovery is a huge part of it. Understanding their business, understanding their unique applications. But yeah, the discovery is probably the biggest part. Finding what we like to call that wedge, if you will,
yeah.
that kind of separates them, or separates us between their existing provider or any potential providers they're talking to. So yeah, discovery is 100% more important than the presentation. Anyone can present, right? Anyone can present, but to discover, to connect with that prospect, to unravel, what are their pain points, what's not working for them, what is working for them as well. You don't want to put that prospect when you're engaged.
And what do you typically find during discovery where you know it's a match versus not a match?
Uh, Typically, obviously, for one, they're not happy. For one, if they actually, a lot of times our prospects, they're kind of on guard. They're kind of like, okay, uh, I'm not going to give you too much information, right? I want to see kind of what you're going to ask me, because they're always kind of a little uncomfortable. Um, but the minute I get a whiff that their service is a little, the current service they're getting is a little slow, or that some of their employee, I typically deal with business owners. So if I get a sense that some of their employees, if he indicates aren't happy with their service, or it's a little slower, I kind of get a whiff that, yeah, maybe I do have an opportunity here. And also, the other thing too is if they've been with a certain provider for a long time, that's when I know, listen, you haven't really looked at other options. If you've been with your same provider for, say, 10 years, this is why we're here. We're helping you understand what other options are out there.
Yeah. And what type of client matches you the best from your process, your skills?
I'd like the small business. The small business is typically like where I like to roll. I mean, that's in the Southeast. That's pretty much the dominant business. So, companies with 50 or less employees,
Yeah.
those are the type of businesses that I really like to deal with. I don't want to deal with large government contracts. There's nothing wrong with that space, but I typically, yeah, 50 or less employees is really, I think, where I'm comfortable
Yeah.
and relatable. And I think it's a fun space to be in because they can make decisions quick.
And do they typically have any in-house technical
Sometimes
people?
they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes, but mostly no, that's not the case. We're the outside source provider, so they're either using a competitor of mine that's of similar size, or they're using what we like to call the two bobs in a truck, the single guy IT guy that's just driving around, uh, take putting out fires, so to speak, not being proactive, not having the staff to do or provide what we can. So that's pretty much what we're going up against right now in this current market.
Yeah. And when can you tell you're not going to get a deal?
If they Typically, if I can tell pricing is going to be an issue, if that's the first thing they talk about,
The only thing.
especially in
Yeah.
this economy right now, there's so much uncertainty with the presidential election, all that stuff. If they start talking about pricing right off the bat, and then also number two, if they say security is not important, IT security, if they just kind of blow that off, like, oh, I don't cybersecurity, I don't need to worry about that. My business is so small, the hackers don't care about me. If they don't have any kind of you know
Concern. Yeah.
importance as it relates to cybersecurity, they're probably not a good fit.
Yeah. And are there still a lot of people like that, or is it just old school, or people haven't been hacked before or hadn't had a problem?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's both, really. Yeah, I mean, most people know about ransomware and all those things that are out there, but it's the old school, good old boy. Again, we're in the South, kind of attitude that they're not coming after me. I'm not Walmart. I'm not Target. But that's the part of, the education that we have with our clients is that, the small business space, the small business, you're the number one target because
Right.
you don't
Yeah.
have the
Any
systems in place.
security. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly.
And how complex does it get? You talked about a one call close, but do they don't give
Yeah.
you a PO then? You have to still work through the administrative process, or they sign your
No,
letter of
if
intent,
if
or
I, we have, a simple one-page agreement. We go in there. So I have the agreement ready to go when I'm meeting with the owner.
yeah,
So, and so I give them the opportunity. If they're not that unhappy, they can sign an agreement right there and we can start the onboarding process in like a week. Now, does that happen all the time? No, that's a small percentage of my interactions or my involvement with prospects, but we do have the ability to sign them on the spot.
and let's say they don't. How do you keep the
Hmm.
process moving without it
Yeah.
either dying or,
Yeah. So that's a great question. And I think we have a good process as it relates to the follow up. Typically, after I meet with the prospect, great meeting. He's like, let me think about it, whatever. I got to talk to my people. Typically, what I'll do is I have this boilerplate, if you will, summary email. It's very
sure,
short,
yeah,
but it describes everything we talked about in high level, not all the minutia, not all the details of services, but it says, okay, if you do, these are your three options basically. And I leave it at that. So again, they get a quick summary. I usually send it the same day or within 12 hours. So they have it. And then I let it marinate for a little bit. When I say marinate, maybe for a day or two. But then I start following up. I don't believe in following up every day. I think that's a little too intrusive. I think you got to have, again, that kind of cadence where, you follow up with a call, you follow up with an email. If you see something online, a lot of times I'll research that company that I'm trying to get the business of. If there's something in the news that's related to something they got going on, I'll say, hey, I just saw this, by the way, as it
yeah.
relates to your company. This is another reason why we are the best fit for you. So just staying engaged, but not to the point of annoying them.
Yeah. And what sales skill do you feel you would do a lot better in sales if you had it?
So you're asking me something that I don't think I have?
You, you may have it, but if you had it, if you were better
Mm-hmm.
at it, like some people
Mm.
are great at rapport and not bad at closing, or
Yeah.
they're bad at keeping the cadence moving.
Uh, yeah, that's a good question. I think for me, it's more on the, I guess, mathematical side. I'm not a great math guy.
Yeah.
Uh, I wish I was probably better at numbers and being able to find things faster in that regard. But that's a really tough question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you're good at pulling out and discovering what the key
Yeah.
reason for them to switch.
Mhm.
I mean, the math
Yeah.
is good to kind of like in your mind do like an ROI, like what's that costing
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at.
Okay.
I wish I could be better at that, and that's 100% on the head. So you definitely
Because
described that correctly for me.
that's hard to do sometimes when you're in flow with the client, right? To be thinking, oh, year
Exactly.
and a half ahead. And like, how do you stay motivated? Because this is a tough space, isn't it? Because close rate is
It
probably
is.
not 50%, it's probably less, right?
No, no, no,
Yeah.
no. Definitely not. Uh, Staying motivated. It's a fun business. I'm able to stay focused on one task. My one task
Yeah.
is to bring them on as a managed services client. So my job, my position is very focused. I don't have to worry about 10 different solutions that I can offer the client. I have one thing to offer. So that helps me stay motivated. Uh, Seeing customers, obviously, I'm sure a lot of salespeople say this, but a lot of when I see customers and they come back to me and they say how happy they are with our
Yeah.
service, when I see them post things on Google reviews about how great they're being taken care of, that gives me a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're back. I guess okay. Sorry about that.
No
Internet.
problem.
Okay.
What has been your longest sales process or cycle?
Ooh, okay. Well, yeah. So I used to sell software to government agencies, primarily
Okay.
sheriff's departments, police departments. So they'd have to get permission from the county board or whoever. It was
Yeah.
so those. So probably I'd say a
Wow.
year to a year and a half. That was a long time ago, but yeah, that was it was very rewarding at the same time. But yeah, it was about a year of the sales cycle.
And doesn't your business, do they have to cancel their current provider, right? Or is there a
Yes.
contract that, yeah,
Yeah, typically I'm going against somebody that they're in an existing contract, but our space, yes, that's true. But a lot of times our space is you can get out in 30 days.
you can't. And do you
Yeah.
guys host like email and other apps for them, or is that
Oh yeah. Well, we do have a data center, so we can host a lot of their data for them. I mean, typically their apps are hosted by a third-party provider, and email. We're typically pushing Office 365,
okay?
but we do have a data center where we can host a lot of their infrastructure for sure.
Yeah. And do any of these deals take months where it's multiple calls and multiple,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Because I mean, like I said, some of the agreements that that I'm going against with my in relation to my competitors, it may be 6 months before they can technically get out. So, yeah, there is definitely instances where it's been up to a year. And again, I've had clients or prospects that I've been working with. They'll ghost me, of course, even though I'm constantly reaching out in some form of fashion, whether it be LinkedIn, email, call, whatever the case may be. And then all of a sudden, I'll get a email that says, "Hey, Stephen, we're ready." And that's the best feeling in the world, right? So, um, but again, part of that is having a pipeline, so you're not just dependent on that one deal. You've got many others, you know, that you're
and
working.
is it hard to get in to speak with these people? I got to believe that they get hit by
Yeah.
salespeople all the time, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's probably the hardest part of my job, honestly, is getting in front of that decision maker. And so having the ability to kind of refine my pipeline list, I use Zoom Info, which I think is a great tool, because it gives you a lot of insight into the company, a lot of different ways you can communicate with the prospect. So absolutely, that's probably the hardest part of my job is to get that meeting.
What's your secret there? You're obviously
Well,
successful
I
at
mean,
it.
yeah, I do have a script. I don't want my competitors to hear it if they're on
Okay.
LinkedIn, but uh,
We won't
but
tell
I
anyone.
do have yeah, it is kind of I do have a script, but I will say it's to the point. In other words, I've heard you talk about this too. It's I'm bringing value. I'm bringing something the minute I connect with them.
Yeah.
In other words, that I'm offering something that they don't currently have.
Okay.
And so I'm able to kind of engage them, tweak their interest. Like I even heard you say on your show or one of your other viewers, one of the perfect, I'll talk about this, the intro and the cold call, because again, cold calling, I believe, is still very important to our job, is that you intro, when you get the business owner phone, I only have a minute. In other words, you are important. And that does work. I
I've
promise you it
heard.
works. And once I heard that, I was like, "Wow, that is ingenious." So that's part of my script,
Yeah. Well, it kind of creates curiosity. What's so important that Steven's calling me
right?
when he's so
Exactly.
busy? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
That's pretty powerful that you're able to do that from a cold call to an owner.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And typically, they're very receptive to that.
Yeah. And do you do text or cell phone or
Hmm.
desktop?
Zoom Info, we've only really started using, but yeah, I've actually I won't start with the cell phone because I don't want to be too intrusive. I'll start with it'll give you a direct dial number, a headquarter number. I won't start with that, but yeah, I will call the owners on the cell phone for sure.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, owners are busy. They got people calling them all the time. They may say, "Hey, I'm too busy right now. Get back to me." X, Y, Z. So I may send them like a quick little follow up text, like, "Hey, this is Steven. I just spoke to you on the phone. I know you're busy. I want to just see about, maybe having a quick discussion to talk about what we can do for you,
Yeah. That's pretty
and then start that
powerful.
dialogue, start connecting with them.
Yeah. And is there anything unique about Louisiana? I've got a bunch of folks from Louisiana in my course. It just
Yeah.
seemed disproportionate.
Yeah. I mean, we're definitely we're definitely, it's a small market, obviously, no matter what city you are. New Orleans is different than Baton Rouge, and Baton Rouge is different than Shreveport. Those are
Really?
some of the big markets, if you would, in
Yeah.
Louisiana. Um, but we're very, trusting people in our community. So you do a lot of business with my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law provides a service for me, that kind of thing, and we're very trusting, and we're loyal. So if you do a good job as a service provider, whatever service that is, we're very loyal to our vendors. And
Yeah.
so I think that you don't see that a lot in other businesses. Maybe it's all a pricing game. And don't get me wrong, it's a pricing game, what we do too. But there is, I think there's a certain kind of trust and loyalty that we have with one another.
And how about as far as networking? Has that been effective
Mhm.
on your prospecting side?
You know, a lot of people do that I know, that are very successful. They do the chambers, and they do all these, breakfast luncheons and stuff like that. Personally, I don't enjoy that. It's just my
It's not your
style.
bag.
Yeah, I
I,
mean, I kind of, yeah.
I didn't
Yeah,
necessarily mean the organized networking, but like you go into Joe's business and
uh,
part of the negotiations. Could you introduce me to Mike, your friend Mike, who over here? Or do you know someone else that could use this service?
that that is, I've always thought about it. I'm probably guilty of not trying that,
Yeah.
but um, that is a good point. Um, so people would be helpful, and that could potentially lead to other meetings. Yeah, because again, a lot, I feel like I generally connect well with people regardless if they come on board with us or not. But that's a great point. I don't do that, and I think I definitely need to put that into my repertoire, so to speak.
Well, I
It's a
mean,
good point.
yeah, everyone's uses the tools that they got, right? If you're good with the phone,
Right.
phone's
Yeah.
pretty direct. And is your
Right.
market active on LinkedIn, or is LinkedIn kind of new to them, or is it catch as
Our
catch
market, no,
can?
our market is everyone's posting on LinkedIn. All my competitors, and they're posting videos of successful installations and successful trade shows or successful lunch and learns. So yeah, they're very active on LinkedIn, and it's also a good tool for me because it gives me some kind of competitive analysis too. I can see what other people are doing, what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think LinkedIn is extremely utilized in our marketplace for sure.
And what do you wish you learned when you, what do you wish you learned earlier in your career that you now know? Everything?
You know, yeah, right. I mean, obviously, I think experience is number one. Having those experiences, having those wins, having those losses is immeasurable. But when I was younger, I would probably say, and again, it may sound kind of generic, but work smarter, not necessarily work harder. What I mean by that is, when you're young, just starting out, it's all about, how many dials can I make? How many CRM systems can I update to impress my boss, right? I'm doing the work, and knowing you're doing the work, but not actually focusing on the mission at hand, which is to get in front of that decision maker, right? You can
Yes.
run 1,000 meetings, but if they're terrible meetings, because again, you're meeting with the office manager, for example, of a business, and you're depending on him or her to sell that solution for you. It's like that game of telephone. Remember in the old
Yep.
days, you say a message, and then that to another person, and then the person next to him would say another message. The message gets skewed, and
Yes.
so that's what I say by work smarter. Really trying to understand that not everyone is going to can be a client, right? You got to focus, do the research, and then dive into having an accurate target list. So when you do get that meeting, that's going to be someone that potentially could use your service.
And that's pretty much judgment, right? It's
Yeah.
immaturity. You know what to work
Yeah.
on, you know how to work on it.
Yeah.
And did somebody teach you that, or was it just the school of hard knocks? Or
Uh, I think it was a little combination of both. I think early on they kind of just throw you to the wolves because you're on a cheap salary,
yeah, they
and
don't
they're like
care.
they know they know churn and burn. They know only what percentage is going to make it anyway. So, but once you start having some success and you start elevating your career, finding different jobs and having more better jobs, and yeah, I would definitely say as I progressed, as I took a job where it took a lot of traveling throughout the country, there was definitely some good uh, learning and teaching from people that I reported to, and
Yeah.
so. But again, experience. I think, and then also do some also training. I think another thing that I find is really effective now that we do role playing. So
Yeah.
I'm the prospect, and then my colleague is the salesperson, and then just role playing different scenarios, because again, every scenario and every situation when you walk in with a new prospect is going to be a little bit different, even
Yeah.
though you have a process like we do.
Yeah.
Role play.
Right.
So, and I think that helps sharpen your skills.
Yeah. It's like every game and every sport is a little different, right?
Yep.
You know how to play, but you don't know how to play
Right.
against them today.
Right. Exactly. You have to adjust to their formation or their defense. Yeah, exactly. Again, going back to the sports analogies, I think it is great for sales.
Yeah. And when reps come to you, what's the most common thing they're asking? Can I get
Uh
some of your leads?
no, 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 no. I think the main thing is, how do you get the meeting? Like how do you do
Yeah.
it? Like what's your, you know,
Magic.
and yeah, and again, I go back to the script. Yeah, that's part of it. But there's also just easy things to recommend. Like just get to the point. This business owner does not want to say, if you ask him, how's your day going? No one cares about that. The business owner doesn't care. How are you doing? Get right to the point. In other words, they'll listen, but you got to get on message right away. Be direct.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, Stephen, I really appreciate your time today. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
Typically, y'all have a like a little feed that happens after these podcasts. I'll put in my LinkedIn profile link. So if anyone has any questions or has comments, I'd love to hear from them.